Welcome back. This is the pregame.com video and audio podcast. This is segment 3 of 4. This is our second segment of Big Game Previews. I'm joined by Marco D'Angelo, 30 years in the business, and Vegas Runner, a genuine professional batter. All right, USC Ohio State. Vegas Runner, what is the number one key betting factor in this game, in your opinion?
The shock of the number to me. Last year when they played at USC was a 10.5-point favorite and blew this team away. I mean, kept them out of the end zone completely. Now they're traveling to Ohio State and they bring them out 6.5-point favorite. To me, that's just too high. I think it's a reflection of what we saw last week from Ohio State. I mean, the odds maker rushed to judgment right away. He dropped Ohio State down 3 spots just because of the performance.
All right, so hold on. Let's be specific. 3 spots, as in they have the odds makers poll where the odds makers say, this is what I believe are the top 20 or 25 teams. Ohio State was 5 and now they're 8 after the one performance.
Correct. And since that adjustment, according to his ratings, they should be 9 on a neutral field. He really believes that USC is this powerful.
But even then, if you give Ohio State 3 for home, this number's a little high.
Right, and that's what I think. I think it is a high number. I think that's why the wise guys grabbed any 7s when it went to 7, 7.5. They jumped up and grabbed them. Couple did lay 6 early from what I heard because they opened even 4.
Just one note, VR. I saw a 4.5 come out on the game originally, and then it immediately went to 6.5.
And that kind of Saturday night or Sunday night action is the sharpest of the sharp wise guys typically. Now, some are maybe, again, you got to always be careful with the wise guys. There may be an effort to buy back, knowing the USC, making a projection, USC is going to get all the action, bet it at 4.5, and then hedge it back at 7.
Yeah, that's a guaranteed move for them every time, especially knowing it is going to be that primetime TV game. And Ohio State, USC is such a public team.
So if that's what I never understood. If the wise guys know the 4.5 is too short, why don't the odds makers come out at 6.5 to start with?
That's the value that they find. I mean, if he's always right, then there wouldn't be any of these.
No, but what I'm
moves.
saying, true enough. I'm not saying that every 5th game or whatever, a certain small percentage of games shouldn't be steamed, because again, the lines maker's not always going to agree with the sharps. But what I'm saying is, it seems like in these public games where there's one side, if you looked each week and said, where's the biggest discrepancy between one team and the other, where the public loves one and doesn't love the other, those games 8 out of 10 weeks seem to move in the direction of the public team. You think that that the lines maker could better project that.
I agree 100%, and so many bookmakers cry and argue about that very same thing. Why don't he bring them out higher when you know they're going to lay this anyway? They believe in them power ratings so much, I think, RJ, and they rely so much on them. They don't have that feel that old bookmakers had. Now they're afraid to bring out a team. When New England was covering all them spreads, every bookmaker was crying, saying, bring them out at 20 if you have to. I don't care. I'm tired of cashing tickets of this team laying 14.
They caught up there.
Because it took a while.
But VR, last year when that line was 10.5, I can remember us on the podcast having the same conversation. Why was that line so high? Because you never saw Ohio State as a 10.5-point underdog. People were questioning that. I think they have problems when it's 2 marquee teams. I mean, let's face it, Ohio State's one of the biggest marquee teams east of the Mississippi.
So you're saying the lines maker has problems when it's 2 marquee teams?
Yes.
I mean, this seems to replicate a bowl game, as in not only do you have 2 marquee teams, you have teams of different styles from different conferences, and again, this feels like a bowl game. So, all right, so Marco, in your opinion, what is the single key betting factor that our listeners and watchers should be considering?
Well, there's actually 2 factors, and it's going to...
say one, and then
we'll take it from there.
We'll take it there. Well, one is for Ohio State and one's for USC. For Ohio State, were they looking ahead to Navy? I say definitely they were looking ahead, the Navy game. Southern Cal, they got pounded last year, huge revenge game. Plus, they're playing a team that has a gimmick offense. You just don't face that Navy-style offense, and it's hard to prepare for, especially when you got one eye on next week's game. So, yes, Ohio State is better than they looked last week. Are they good enough to win this Saturday? That's the question. On the flip side, part 2 is Southern Cal. Are they as good as they looked last week? You got a freshman quarterback going on the road into the shoot.
Let's talk about this a second. How good did they look? And I was just listening to the game on the radio. Unless I'm mistaken, it was 7-3 with about 4 minutes in the second half.
Yeah, and that's all.
4 minutes in the second. No. 4 minutes in the second quarter.
Yeah, in the first half. That's all. That's the only part I watched, actually. The first quarter and the second, because then Alabama game started, and that's what I caught. And San Jose State was hanging in there. It didn't come till late that USC onslaught came at the end.
And again, I mean, who's to say what the meaning of that tight score, but to almost be at the half, to play 25 minutes of football, let's say 7-3, you know, how USC, and again, I didn't see the end of the game, but, well, I guess that's the question. Do you think USC looked really good?
USC rolled up yardages. You know, that offensive line took over the game. They were running the ball at will in the second half, and when you're running the ball at will, any quarterback's going to look better, and that opened up the passing lanes, and he had great numbers. I think he completed 19 of 23 passes in the game. You're not going to have the San Jose State defense on the field on Saturday night.
Yeah, you ain't completing 80% of your passes like you did Saturday.
So, you know, don't overreact to the freshman's first game.
So let's talk about the line again, because if you assume a 7-point adjustment between home and away, and I think it's a 6-point adjustment with okay teams, it's probably a 7-point adjustment,
especially at Ohio State,
with Ohio State or USC. So let's talk about that in a minute. 7 points means if it was neutral, it'd be 3.5 points different, and then if it's the other team's field, it'd be 3.5 more, which adds up to 7. So that means right now that if this game was played at USC, they'd be a 14-point favorite. So that means relatively USC is over a field goal better than Ohio State, relatively more than they were last year. Does that seem right?
I thought that 4 was too high that they brought out, to be honest with you, because this kid is a freshman. He has not gone on. This is his first road game, and of all road games, to go into an 80,000 seat place, a very hostile environment against a very good defense. And he's interception prone. We know that from high school. I think they're taking it a little too nonchalant, too. I think it's the confidence of USC that's driving this number up. You see, they act like they have not a care in the world about Ohio State. No, we weren't looking ahead.
I have a saying, RJ, and I use it all the time. No team is as good as their best game or as bad as their worst game. And this is a classic example where the public's looking at 2 results, Ohio State almost losing to Navy and Southern Cal blowing out San Jose State. You have to find a happy medium here, and the public perception right now is that Southern Cal is for real, and that's an over.
45 seconds. Give me one more point that the bettors should consider in this game.
In this game, also the fact that this is a night game at Ohio State. They don't play a lot of night games at Ohio State. That is huge. The crowd will be more intense. It's always going to be a sellout. But when you're tailgating all afternoon, the crowd is wild in anticipation. You went there.
Good point. 45 seconds. Last key point.
Don't punish Ohio State for the Big Ten going 2-5 ATS last week, because that's all we're hearing, how weak the Big Ten is, and I think that Ohio State's getting punished for that, and that's why we're seeing such a high line.
But in general, that is a good approach. Is really no one really knows about any of these teams. When you see a whole conference do poorly, just like in the early bowl games, I think that is generally something to consider, right? Yeah. You're just saying but don't overestimate its value this week.
That quickly, yeah, exactly.
All right. So, great conversation, guys. This was our big game preview. Remember now, we have our 4th segment coming up, which is we give away free picks. And you can see all the segments if you're watching on video at pregame.tv. We'll be right back.